Hello everyone. Before we move on, let's briefly revisit the key points about arrangement and description from an archival perspective. Arrangement is the process of organizing records according to their provenance, who created or accumulated them, and maintaining their original order. This ensures that the context in which the records were created and used is preserved, which is fundamental to archival integrity. Description, meanwhile, involves documenting the essential information about the records, such as their creator, date, function, and content, so that researchers can understand their significance and navigate the collection effectively. For example, in an archives holding the records of a government agency, arranging files by the divisions that created them and keeping them in the sequence used by that agency preserves evidence of administrative processes and decision-making. Describing these files with detailed notes about their content, dates, and functions allows a researcher to trace the evolution of policies or programs without misinterpreting the materials. Understanding arrangement and description is critical because they lay the foundation for access. Well-arranged and accurately described records enable archivists to create finding aids and other access tools, which guide researchers to the information they need while maintaining the record's evidential and informational value. For this chapter, our focus is on finding aids and developing access tools, which build directly on the principles of arrangement and description that we have previously discussed. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to achieve two main learning outcomes. First, you will understand the concept of finding aids. In archival practice, a finding aid is any tool or instrument that helps researchers locate and interpret records within a collection. Finding aids are more than simple lists. They are carefully structured tools that provide context, describe the content and scope of records, and often explain how the materials are arranged. They reflect the archivist's work in translating complex archival collections into navigable, intelligible forms. For example, an accession register or a detailed series-level guide in a government archive allows users to identify relevant records efficiently without having to examine every document individually. Second, you will learn how to develop access tools by applying the essential elements of archival description and arrangement. Developing access tools means creating instruments, whether registers, indexes, or online guides, that enable users to find and interpret archives accurately. Effective access tools incorporate information about the creator, dates, context, and relationships between records, helping researchers understand the collection as a whole. For instance, in a UITM archive, a finding aid might describe a series of faculty minutes, noting the dates, purpose, and content, so that researchers studying curriculum development can quickly pinpoint relevant files. Understanding these outcomes is critical because they transform organized and described records into truly accessible archives, supporting research, accountability, and preservation of institutional memory. Today's chapter will not only explain the concepts, but also guide you on how to practically develop and evaluate these tools. Creating a guide to the archives is a fundamental practice in archival work that focuses on making collections organized, navigable, and understandable for users. Essentially, a guide provides an overview of a collection, explaining how the records are arranged, who created them, and what they contain. It acts as a roadmap for researchers, connecting the principles of arrangement and description to practical access. Unlike simple inventories or lists, a guide contextualizes records, highlighting series, subseries, and important features that help users interpret the collection accurately. From an archival perspective, a guide ensures that the intellectual and evidential value of records is preserved while facilitating access. For instance, a government archive might produce a guide for its correspondence series, outlining the offices involved, date ranges, and types of correspondence included. This allows researchers to understand the context of the records before examining them, saving time and maintaining the integrity of the archival materials. Creating a guide to the archives is important because it enhances accessibility, preserves context, and supports research and accountability. A well-prepared guide allows researchers to locate relevant records efficiently without handling the entire collection, while clearly communicating the provenance, arrangement, and purpose of the records to maintain their evidential and informational value. The key elements of an archival guide include the creator information, scope and content of the records, the arrangement of series and subseries, access conditions or restrictions, and contextual notes that explain the background and significance of the materials. For example, a university archive might create a guide for administrative records, describing each series such as minutes, reports, and correspondence, providing date ranges, and including notes about relevant policies or events. By doing so, researchers can navigate the collection efficiently while understanding the broader institutional context. In essence, a guide bridges the gap between well-arranged records and meaningful access, transforming archives from a static repository into a usable and intelligible resource for research and reference. Creating a guide to the archives involves producing a structured finding aid that provides an overview of an archival collection, making it intelligible and accessible to researchers. From an archival perspective, a guide summarizes the contents, arrangement, and context of records while preserving their evidential and informational value. It explains who created the records, why they were created, and how they are organized. Unlike simple inventories, a guide provides contextual information that helps users understand the collection as a whole and the relationships between its components. In essence, a guide is the bridge between the internal archival organization and the external user's ability to locate and interpret records accurately. Guides can be classified into two main types. The first type provides a general account of all or part of the holdings of one or several archival institutions, often including administrative or background history. These guides are usually arranged by groups and series, giving a high-level view of how the records are structured and how different series relate to one another. The second type is more specialized, focusing on holdings that relate to a specific subject, period, geographical area, or category of documents. Such guides are particularly valuable for researchers with a narrow focus, allowing them to identify relevant records quickly while understanding their context and scope. Both types of guides are essential in archival practice as they support both broad and targeted research needs. The importance of creating a guide lies in its ability to enhance accessibility, preserve context, and support research and accountability. Guides provide information at both the group and series level, giving researchers an overall view of the archival holdings and their organization. They act as a master finding aid, summarizing collections so users can identify relevant records without handling every item. Guides must be kept up to date to reflect new acquisitions or changes in arrangement, and their descriptions should comply with international archival standards such as ISADG to ensure professional consistency and interoperability. By doing so, guides allow both researchers and archivists to navigate collections efficiently while maintaining the integrity and evidential value of the records. A well-prepared guide typically contains several essential elements. These include creator information, who produced the records, scope and content, types of records, date ranges, and topics, arrangement, how the collection is structured into series and subseries, access and restrictions, any limitations on use, and contextual notes, background information on functions, activities, or events related to the records. By incorporating these elements, a guide transforms a collection from a static repository into a usable, intelligible resource. In managing archives, one of the most important strategies for ensuring both accessibility and preservation of records is the use of a variety of finding aids. Finding aids act as tools that guide users through the archival collections, helping them locate specific records while also understanding their context and provenance. Firstly, some finding aids are created by the original agency or person who produced the records. These include registers, indexes, and filing systems. Registers, for example, may record the chronological receipt or dispatch of documents, while indexes often provide references to important topics or names within the collection. Filing systems reflect how the organization or individual originally managed their records. These aids are particularly useful because they preserve the original order and context, which is critical for understanding why the records were created and how they were used. For instance, a government department's index of correspondence can help researchers trace decisions or policies over time. Secondly, archivists create professional finding aids to improve accessibility and organization. These include accession registers, which document the acquisition of new records and help track their provenance, descriptive inventories, which summarize the contents of record groups, making it easier for users to know what is available without handling the originals, and guides to holdings, which provide overviews of collections, highlighting major themes, formats, or periods covered. For example, an archive of university records may include a guide to holdings that outlines all faculty meeting minutes, student registers, and administrative reports by year. Finally, there are compiled finding aids, which aggregate information from multiple sources for easier research. These include special lists, which focus on specific topics or events, subject files, which organize records by theme, source analyses, which evaluate the content and reliability of records, reference guides, which provide instructions or advice on how to use the collections, and media guides, which help locate audio, video, or photographic materials. For example, an archive may create a subject file guide for all materials related to a national event, combining newspaper clippings, official reports, and photographs, allowing researchers to access a complete picture of that event without searching multiple collections individually. By maintaining a range of finding aids, from original creator tools to professional archivist aids and compiled guides, archives not only make it easier for users to locate information, but also ensure that the historical context, provenance, and integrity of the records are preserved. These tools are essential for supporting research, teaching, and institutional memory, while also protecting the physical and digital integrity of archival holdings. Now let's explore how to create a guide to the archives, and I want you to think of a guide not just as a list of documents, but as a roadmap, a tool that helps users find, understand, and use records effectively, while also showing how the archive is arranged and described. The first step is to outline the administrative history of the organization. Why is this important? Because without context, records are just papers. Administrative history tells us who created the records, why, and how the organization functioned. For example, in a university archive, we would explain when a faculty was established, its departments, and its key administrative roles. This helps users understand why certain records exist and where to look for them. Next, we explain how the records were created. Think about this. What activities generated these records? Who handled them? What purpose did they serve? This is part of provenance, which is a cornerstone of archival science. For instance, meeting minutes don't just record decisions. They show who decided what, when, and why. Understanding this process is crucial for interpreting the records correctly. We also need to cite any relevant legislation. For example, in Malaysia, the National Archives Act 2003 guides how public records are preserved and accessed. Including this information helps users understand legal restrictions or why some records are protected. Another key point is to indicate organizational or administrative changes along with dates. Why does this matter? Because records are tied to the structure of the organization. If a department merged into another in 2010, the guide should clearly show which records belong to which department before and after the change. This ensures the arrangement and original order of records are preserved, which is critical for both access and historical accuracy. We should also include additional sources, like books, articles, or theses that provide context. These help users see the bigger picture and understand the significance of the records beyond the archive itself. Finally, the guide must include contextual information about the records, titles, authors, dates of creation, and purpose. This is part of archival description, helping users know what the records are, why they were created, and how they can be used. For example, a collection of financial reports might list the report titles, authors, fiscal years, and purposes, allowing researchers to quickly determine relevance. So when we combine all of this, administrative history, record creation process, legislation, organizational changes, additional sources, and detailed descriptions, we create a guide that is not only useful for research, but also demonstrates good archival practice. It transforms the archive from a simple storage space into a cohesive, meaningful, and accessible knowledge resource. And here's the takeaway. A well-prepared guide ensures users can navigate, understand, and appreciate the records while maintaining their context, integrity, and historical value. It's like giving users a map and a key to unlock the full story behind the archives.
Moving on, let's look at an important part of creating a guide to the archives, the series description. A series is essentially a collection of related records, and the series description acts like a detailed label or map that tells users exactly what is in that collection, how it is organized, and why it matters. Understanding series descriptions is critical because it allows researchers, students, or staff to locate information efficiently and understand the context and significance of the records, without having to physically handle every document. The first elements we consider are the group code and series number. These are identifiers that help the archive maintain order. Think of them as the address of the series within the larger archive. Without these, finding a specific collection in a large archive would be confusing and time-consuming. The series title then gives a clear name reflecting what the series is about or its purpose. A good title immediately informs users about the content. For example, a series titled Faculty Meeting Minutes, 2010 to 2020 clearly tells the user what type of records are included and the time period covered. We also include the first and last dates of the records in the series. This is important because users often search for information within a specific time frame. For example, a researcher studying changes in university policies between 2015 and 2018 will know whether this series contains relevant documents. Alongside dates, we note the number of items in the series and their physical type. Are they paper documents, photographs, maps, audio recordings, or digital files? This information is helpful for planning research, especially if certain items require special handling, equipment, or permissions. Next comes the description of the documents, which is arguably one of the most important parts of a series description. This includes the topics or subjects covered, the functions or activities documented, and a summary of the content. This allows users to understand the relevance of the records without needing to open each file. For example, if the series contains financial reports, the description should mention whether it covers budgets, expenditures, audits, or policy compliance. In addition, the series description should include any important information from the record's history, such as previous custodians, locations, or notable changes in how the records were managed. When relevant, we also include related series. This helps users see connections between collections. For instance, correspondence between different departments might be stored in separate series, but a note in the description could point users to related correspondence files, ensuring they get a complete picture. Another essential element is provenance, which explains the origin of the records if it isn't covered elsewhere. Provenance helps maintain the principle of respecting the original creator's context. If a series list exists, it should be referenced to provide a detailed breakdown of items in the series. Similarly, any indexes or other finding aids should be mentioned. These tools make it much easier for users to search for specific documents within a series, especially in large collections. Finally, it is crucial to explain any conditions on access, such as restrictions due to confidentiality, privacy, or preservation concerns. For example, personnel files or sensitive reports might require permission to access, or fragile photographs may only be viewed in a controlled environment. By including all these elements, group code, series number, title, dates, number and type of items, document description, related series, provenance, indexes, and access conditions, a series description becomes a powerful tool for both users and archivists. It not only helps users navigate and understand the records, but it also ensures that the archive itself is well organized, accessible, and professionally maintained. In practice, a well-prepared series description transforms an archive from a simple storage of documents into a living resource for research, learning, and institutional memory. So when you are creating or using a guide to the archives, always remember, a good series description is like a roadmap and a key combined. It shows the location of the records, explains their significance, and guides users in interpreting, using, and appreciating the archives correctly. Properly described series also support the principles of archival arrangement and description, preserving the original order, context, and value of records for current and future users. And ultimately, that is the purpose of any archive, to provide access to information while safeguarding its historical and organizational context. Moving on, let's talk about an important but sometimes overlooked aspect of creating a guide to the archives, the distribution and management of copies. Preparing a guide is not enough on its own. If the guide isn't available to the right people in the right places, it cannot serve its purpose. That's why proper copying and distribution are essential. At the very least, there should be 2 copies in the reference area. One copy is for research use, allowing users to consult the guide directly while conducting their work. The other copy is for staff use, so that staff can assist users, answer questions, and provide guidance without disturbing the researcher's copy. For example, if a student wants to find records about faculty meeting minutes, staff can quickly check the guide themselves and direct the student appropriately. A copy should also be kept in the editorial area, which serves as the space for future revisions. This ensures that any updates, corrections, or additions can be made systematically. Think of it as the working copy that allows the archive to stay current and accurate. Additionally, a copy should be preserved in the storage area of the archive. This acts as a master or backup copy in case the reference or editorial copies are lost, damaged, or out of date. For archives with regional offices, each office should also have a copy, ensuring that researchers who are far from the main archive can still access the guide. Likewise, the director of the archival institution should hold a copy for oversight and strategic decision-making purposes. Other copies may be distributed to interested parties, such as partner institutions, researchers, or departments that frequently use the archive. This helps ensure that knowledge of the records is shared responsibly and that users in different locations have the necessary tools to navigate the collections. Finally, it is essential that heads of regional offices are responsible for keeping the copies in their possession up to date. Any amendments or additions sent by the headquarters must be incorporated promptly, so that every user is working with the most accurate and reliable guide. In practice, this system of distribution ensures that all copies, whether for research, staff use, backup, or regional offices, are consistent, current, and accessible. Properly managed copies support efficient research, maintain uniform practices across locations, and reflect the professional standards of archival management. After all, a guide is only as effective as its availability and accuracy, and making sure the right people have the right copy is key to achieving this. Moving on, let's look more closely at creating lists as part of developing access tools in archival management. Lists are not just simple inventories, they play a critical role in providing both intellectual control and administrative control over archival holdings. Intellectual control helps archivists and users understand what the records are about, while administrative control helps the archive manage, track, and retrieve records efficiently. Without well-prepared lists, it becomes difficult to know what exists in the archive and where it is located. One important principle to remember when creating lists for developing access tools is that a list describes archives within one series only. It does not describe records across different groups or multiple series. This principle is grounded in the core archival concepts of provenance and original order, which are also reinforced by the International Standard ISAD-G, General International Standard Archival Description. ISAD-G emphasizes that archival description should reflect the structure and context of record creation, rather than reorganizing records based on subject or convenience. For example, if an archive has a Ministry of Education funds with several series under it, such as annual reports, policy files, and correspondence, each series must have its own separate list. A list created for the annual reports series will only describe records within that series. Even if reports in another series discuss similar topics, they are not included. This approach ensures clarity, avoids duplication, and maintains professional archival standards. Most importantly, it helps users understand the context in which records were created and used. According to ISAD-G, archival description is carried out across multiple levels, from the general to the specific. These levels include the fonts, subfonts, series, subseries, file, and item. Lists are most commonly created at the series level, and they describe the contents of that series in a structured and systematic way. ISAD-G stresses that each level of description should only include information relevant to that level and should not repeat information already provided at a higher level. This principle is known as non-repetition of information, and it ensures efficiency and consistency in archival description. In terms of arrangement and description, the unit of description used in a list can vary depending on the nature of the records. Very often, the unit of description is a file or folder, especially when documents were created and maintained together as part of routine administrative work. For instance, a file containing meeting minutes for a particular year would be described as a single unit. This aligns with ISAD-G, which allows flexibility in choosing the most appropriate level of description based on the record's structure and use. However, ISAD-G also recognizes that in some cases, the appropriate unit of arrangement and description is an item, meaning an individual document. This situation usually applies to materials such as maps, signed agreements, treaties, charters, architectural drawings, photographs, or standalone reports that were never part of a larger body of documents like a file. These items exist independently and therefore require separate description. Describing them at the item level ensures that their unique characteristics, significance, and context are properly captured. When individual documents are described separately, each item is assigned its own unique reference number, in line with ISAD-G requirements. The reference code identifies the document's place within the archival hierarchy, linking it back to its series and fonts. For example, a signed agreement would have a reference code that shows the fonts, the series, and its item number. This allows archivists and users to locate, retrieve, and cite the document accurately and consistently. In addition, ISAD-G specifies several core elements of description, such as reference code, title, date, level of description, extent, and name of creator. Including these elements in lists strengthens both intellectual control, by explaining what the record is about, and administrative control, by helping the archive manage and preserve the record over time. Information such as physical condition, access restrictions, and related materials may also be included where relevant. Overall, lists function as a vital bridge between archival arrangement and user access, and ISAD-G provides the framework that ensures these lists are created in a standardized, internationally recognized manner. By focusing on one series at a time, respecting provenance and original order, applying the correct level of description, and assigning individual reference numbers when necessary, archivists are able to maintain order, transparency, and reliability. Ultimately, well-structured lists not only support effective research and retrieval but also reflect best practices in professional archival management and international archival standards. Let's now focus more specifically on the purpose of an item list in archival management. An item list is created when archivists need to describe records at the item level, usually because the documents are unique, significant, or not part of a larger file. Unlike broader access tools, item lists provide very detailed and precise information, making them essential for both control and access. The first purpose of an item list is locating materials. Each item is assigned a unique reference number, allowing both staff and users to quickly locate the exact document within the archive. For example, if a researcher is looking for a specific signed agreement from 1957, the item list allows staff to identify the item, its storage location, and retrieve it efficiently without unnecessary handling of other materials. Secondly, item lists help in identifying provenance. Provenance refers to the creator of the record and the context in which it was produced. An item list records who created the document, when it was created, and under what authority or function. This information is crucial for maintaining the authenticity and evidential value of archival records, and it directly supports the ISAD G. Principle of preserving context. Another key purpose is describing content. Item lists provide a concise but meaningful description of what each document contains. This may include the subject, purpose, and key information found within the item. For example, a map may be described in terms of the area it covers, its scale, and its intended use. This allows users to determine the relevance of the document without needing to view the original. Item lists also assist in identifying related materials. Even though each item is described individually, the list can indicate relationships with other items, files, or series. For instance, an item list entry may refer users to related correspondence files or reports in the same series. This helps users understand connections between records while still respecting archival structure. In addition, item lists play an important role in describing the physical condition of the archives. Information about the material type, size, format, and condition, such as whether a document is fragile, damaged, or requires conservation, can be recorded. This supports preservation planning and helps staff decide how the item should be handled or whether access should be restricted. Finally, item lists explain the conditions of access. Some items may have restrictions due to legal, ethical, or security reasons. An item list clearly states whether a document is open, restricted, or closed, and under what conditions it may be accessed. This protects sensitive information and ensures compliance with legislation and institutional policies. Now, what makes creating item lists different from creating archival guides? The main difference lies in the level of description and purpose. Archival guides are broad access tools that provide an overview of the archive or a large group of records. They are designed to help users understand the overall structure, scope, and significance of collections, often at the fonts or series level. Guides answer the question, what does this archive contain? Item lists, on the other hand, answer a much more specific question, what exactly is this individual document, and how can I access it? Item lists focus on detailed description, precise identification, and direct retrieval. While guides support discovery and orientation, item lists support exact access, control, and preservation. In summary, creating guides and creating item lists serve different but complementary roles. Guides provide the big picture, while item lists provide fine-grained detail. Together, they ensure that archives are both understandable and accessible, while maintaining professional standards, accountability, and long-term preservation. To conclude this chapter, we have explored how access tools are developed in archival management, and why they are essential for both effective control and meaningful access to archives. We began by understanding the role of guides, which provide an overall picture of archival holdings and help users understand the structure, context, and significance of collections. We then moved into series descriptions and lists, where we saw how records are described systematically within one series, respecting provenance, original order, and international standards such as ISAD-G. We also examined the importance of item lists, especially for unique or standalone documents such as maps, agreements, reports, and plans. Through item lists, archivists are able to locate materials accurately, identify provenance, describe content, link related records, assess physical condition, and clearly explain access conditions. Together, these access tools form a complete system that balances intellectual control, administrative control, user access, and preservation. What is important for you to remember is that each access tool serves a different purpose and level of description. Guides give us the big picture, lists organize records within a series, and item lists provide detailed, document-level information. When these tools are created properly, they support professional archival practice, improve research efficiency, and ensure that records retain their authenticity and evidential value over time. Before we move on, I'd like everyone to take 2 minutes for a short recap and reflection. This is not simply a summary activity, but an opportunity to strengthen your cognitive skills, particularly your ability to analyze information, connect key ideas, and clearly express what you have learned. Each of you should think about one key concept you gained from this chapter that helped you better understand archival access tools. Please write down your response in this YouFuture platform. Your written feedback will help you process the knowledge more deeply and will also allow me to evaluate how effectively this chapter has supported your learning. I'll see you guys next week in the physical class.